Good morning again. Welcome to the 2026 FSA Training Conference here in Washington, D.C., our nation's capital. My name is Annmarie Weisman, and I will be your MC for today. I am so excited to be here. The last time we gathered in person was in 2019 in December in Reno, Nevada. I don't know how many of you were there. Give yourself a round of applause for those who were there and came back with us here more than 6 years later. It has been quite a ride to get us here, but we are so happy you're here with us. It's so exciting. We have a great group of people that are coming to be with you today, tomorrow, and Friday. We have people here to present topics that are of interest to you, at least that's our hope. We have people here to assist you in the Resource Center and lots more. We will be recording the sessions and posting them online. If you joined us today and you just want to hear them again, if you have people in your office that have not been able to be here, we hope that you will watch those. They should be up about a week after the conference ends. The only sessions that we will not record are the 4 birds of a feather sessions that are taking place tomorrow afternoon, because that's your chance to talk with others in a more private setting so that you can feel free to say whatever is on your mind. We are also not recording 2 interactive sessions on Friday afternoon on default prevention, again, because we feel like people may have tips that they want to share that they would not want to go on record saying. And there will also be a FAFSA listening session at that same time. You'll choose one of 2. And that will not be recorded. So that's a preview of our coming attractions. Again, I'm just so excited to see you all and have you here in person with us. It's going to be a great week. At this point, I would like to introduce James Bergeron, our Deputy Undersecretary. In addition to his role as Deputy Undersecretary, we were lucky to recently have him as the Acting Chief Operating Officer of Federal Student Aid. So he knows federal student aid. Prior to joining the department, James served as president and CEO of the National Council of Higher Education Resources. Previously, he worked as the director of Education and Human Services Policy for the U.S. House of Representatives Committee on Education and the Workforce, where he developed and managed the committee's legislative agenda, including reauthorization of the Higher Education Act, the Carl D. Perkins Act, and the Technical Education Act, and also the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act. He also served as legislative director for Representative Buck McKeon, where he worked on legislation to simplify the federal financial aid system. He also received a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science from the University of Louisiana at Lafayette. Welcome to the stage, James Bergeron.
Good morning, everyone. I just want to thank you guys for everyone for being here today in our first in-person conference that we've had in quite some time. And before I kind of introduce our distinguished panel, I just want to commend Annmarie for the work and her long tenure here at the department. I think you said you've been with the department for about 19 years. And I think this conference is really an opportunity to highlight some of the really amazing FSA staff and department staff that we have. These are experts. This conference is for you. Make sure that you talk to them, that you learn from them, that you lean in on all of these programs over the next 3 days. Okay, this conference is for you on that. And thank you to Annmarie, and all the rest of the FSA staff that we'll see as well. Thanks, guys. It's now my distinct pleasure to serve as the moderator for this fireside chat with the U.S. Secretary of Education to kick off the first day of the conference. I think everyone has bios that you can access from the website, but I'll go a little bit and talk to you about my boss. Linda McMahon was sworn in as the 13th U.S. Secretary of Education on March 3rd, 2025, so just a few days ago. A few days ago was the one-year anniversary. And she was appointed by the president to that particular job, a businesswoman, education policy leader, and public servant. She has decades of experience in job creation and expanding educational opportunities. She earned a bachelor's degree in French, so those of you that are maybe multilingual, she has a bachelor's degree in French from East Carolina University, and she initially aspired to be a teacher. She later served on the Connecticut State Board of Education and on the Board of Trustees at Sacred Heart University, advocating for teacher empowerment and student success. So she knows higher education. She served directly on, as I said, on the Board of Trustees for that particular university. You guys also know that she's had a multi-decade career in business as Chief Executive Officer of WWE, creating thousands of jobs and sparking her passion for career and technical education. So we're really excited to have the Secretary with us. And so with that, please welcome Secretary of Education, Linda McMahon. We're also going to be joined on stage by Lemon-Strauss, one of our amazing FSA staff that I just talked to you guys about. Lemon-Strauss is the Executive Director of the FAFSA program at Federal Student Aid, responsible for the strategy and execution of the nation's most widely used higher education application, the FAFSA. With over 20 years of experience in education technology, product leadership across the nonprofit, for-profit, and public sectors, he's really a leader in building systems that work better for students. Prior to FSA, he was a Chief Product Officer at Stride and Vice President for College Access Products at the College Board. And Aaron is also an alum from Yale University. So we've got a Connecticut, I'm kind of like the oddball out here. We've got the Connecticut crew coming, but please welcome Aaron to the stage. This is what we're having. I feel somewhat overdressed for that. Really, Aaron needed no introduction from that one, but I felt that you guys needed to hear a little bit of his bio and kind of his background on that. So since its inception, FSA's training conference has included keynote sessions where the department leadership can talk to the agency's priorities and to announce some new exciting initiatives that we've been working on over the last few months and that you can prepare for over the next year as well. And so thank you guys for joining us today, and thank you to Secretary McMahon and Aaron for joining us today. Secretary McMahon, this first question is for you. This week, as I indicated, marks the one-year anniversary of your swearing in. And I remember fondly that, or distinctly, that one of the first meetings we had in March 2025 when you were sworn in was on the FAFSA. I think maybe that was one of the first meetings where you met Aaron and kind of the staff that were dealing with the FAFSA. We were talking at that meeting about the progress on this year's FAFSA, preparation for the next cycle, some of the challenges that we'd seen in previous. And so fast forward today, we're talking about the earliest FAFSA launch in history last year. Why was this such a priority for the administration? And more importantly, I think, will the department meet the October 1st deadline for the release of the 27-28 FAFSA?
Well, good morning, everyone. And James, thanks so much for being here and for Aaron and his jacket.
Yeah.
He asked me backstage, he said, "You really think I ought to wear this?" I said, "Absolutely, you need to wear that." So I'm very happy that he came out because he's actually, the star of this show, because it is through, his expertise that we were really able to fix FAFSA. It was broken during the Biden administration. And so when I first came on board, first of all, I spent the first week trying to pronounce FAFSA. And I thought that was the hardest word I had ever tried to master to say. But it was so important that we get it fixed because we had parents who couldn't even get online, they couldn't apply. And Congress actually, ordered us to get it up, get it fixed, get it open, get it running. And not only did we do that, but we did it thanks to Aaron and his team and his expertise. We were able to do it a little bit ahead of schedule. I actually went to some of the beta tests and participated in the launch and listened to what parents had to say and what students had to say. And they were so pleased with how much easier it was, the shortened length of time to get on. I mean, it went from, hours and days really down to, half hour, 45 minutes, and they just were incredibly pleased, with how the launch needed to be. It is so important that we have this tool so that students can apply, for their federal aid and get into the colleges that they need to get into, that they want to get into, and to have that in advance and to know that process is happening, and for those colleges and universities to also know that those funds are going to be available was critical in us in getting things up and running. And so not only did we find a broken system and fixed it in record length of time, but also are now improving it and putting in other things. Aaron will talk about a little bit of some of those things as well. So it was a huge task, a huge accomplishment, and to not only get it done, but to get it done in record time. And we are absolutely going to launch on time. We're already going to. So, but without doubt, we're doing that. So thanks, big thanks to Aaron and to James also, who was really guiding and pushing this through, because, I had the luxury of coming in and having experts, all around me to get it done. And, I put foot on the gas, but they were the experts who made it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I think people may not understand the important role that the secretary plays. When it comes to kind of setting policy for higher education, and like you said, putting that foot in the gas. Weekly meetings on the FAFSA, which have kind of now turned into like bi-weekly meetings, but definitely a priority. This is a really, I think, a good transition to maybe the next question then, and I would like to talk a little bit about the FAFSA earnings indicator that was added. I mean, one of the first items that came up, I think, in one of those meetings was the important role that FSA could play in making sure that students and families were aware of those courses where maybe, or those programs where maybe they weren't getting the education that they thought that they were going to get. So can you talk maybe about a little about your interest and the administration's interest in that FAFSA indicator
Sure.
that project?
And when Aaron first talked to me about that, and he said, there's something we want to build in, because, a lot of times students and parents just have no idea of the ROI or the return on investment they're going to be making in their education. They're spending all this money, they're borrowing all of this money, but what can they expect, to get a return on? How much money are they going to be able to earn? Is it really worthwhile taking on this debt? And Aaron and I had that conversation early on. He was already thinking about it and working on it. And Aaron, I probably ought to let you talk about how you kind of built that up and put it in place, but I'll just stress the importance, because now parents can actually see this is how much this university, you've asked that your grades be sent or your application be sent to these particular schools. This is how much this program is going to cost at this school, and this is how much people are earning, out of this profession. So it really gives parents an additional tool. So I'm not sure how you went about doing that.
Yeah. I think it's a great connection to James's point about the connection and the investment that's been made by you personally and by the administration. That first meeting that we had on FAFSA, which I think was the first meeting you had after you were sworn in. It was 9 a.m. on the day after you were sworn in.
I remember that.
And in that meeting, you asked a lot of good questions about where we're at and what do we need investment and so forth. But in that meeting, you brought up, how do we make sure that a college education pays off for students and for families? And how do we make sure that people are able to make the right decision? And so that started a conversation within the team of ensuring that people can make the right decisions for themselves and for their families. And it's not about top-down control or eliminating options. If a student wants to go to a program that might have lower return on investment, that's of course fine. People should be able to make their own choices, and they should be able to choose the program that's right for them. But they should know that the decision that they're making, and they should be informed in that decision by what are likely to be, what the average earnings are. And if those earnings are below what you would have with just a high school diploma, that's probably worth you factoring in. And so we came out with the initial earnings indicator in December. One of the pieces of feedback we got from the community was, hey, this data needs to be fresher. This data needs to be updated. It's a little bit out of date because of COVID. And so we're actually excited that in the next couple of weeks we'll be refreshing the data. which will allow us to provide even more accurate information to students about what they're likely to earn on an average basis. The only thing that meeting makes you think of, and to James's point, one of the things that you asked is, what do you need to make this work? Like, this has to work. And you were very outcomes focused about this, about the FAFSA. And we said, well, we're going to need to hire people. We're going to need to hire technical talent because we were not staffed coming in to get the job done. And so in the middle of a hiring freeze and in the middle of reductions elsewhere within the Department of Education, you prioritized making sure that the FAFSA team was able to hire the technical talent that it needed to deliver the FAFSA, the earliest FAFSA in the history. And that is a credit to the prioritization and the investment that the administration made.
And it was just so incredibly important, along the lines of making sure that the education that you're getting is really worth something. A recent stat that I was given is that 23% of bachelor's degrees are saying, you'd be better off with just a high school education. 43% of graduate degrees are saying you'd be better off with just a high school education. So I think it's just all about getting information out there. And I think it's what we've had to do is look at education with a different cultural eye. Heretofore it was, driven, everybody needs to go to college, and I am so for every student that can and wants and needs to go to college, but there are a lot of kids who don't need to go. We have such a workforce shortage now in our trades and in our skills, and the fastest growing sector of millionaires in the country now are tradespeople. So, we just need to look at our education with a full-on cultural eye, encourage all of those who can and want to go to college and who need to go to college to go. College is a wonderful experience, to be able to attend, but not everybody has to go.
That's a great segment. I think talking about kind of CTE, talking about the importance of folks going into college. The president signed the Working Families Tax Cuts into law last July. It includes a number of major reforms that we'll talk about over the next 3 days, such as, a new workforce Pell grant program, common sense loan limits, a new repayment plan. Can you talk about, the impact that, at least how the priority that this bill has been for the department, for FSA, and what you think it'll mean for students?
Yeah, it's just, so incredibly important. And let me start with the workforce Pell. This, I think, is just so critical to getting people into the workforce. We now have this workforce Pell grant program that's, can be 8 weeks. It's shorter in duration, shorter number of hours you have to be in the classroom, and it just gets people into the workforce, sooner. It created a little bit, though, and I know we'll talk about this, the opportunity for a little fraud. Because if there is a difference between the workforce Pell grant and the tuition, that money goes to the student. And if we've had bots that are out there and that have applied for these grants, et cetera, or ghost students, they take that money and run. So we've been able to kind of close that gap and identify, where some of this fraud exists. Right. And an overall fraud prevention program of about $1 billion of saving that money this year, which I think has been, that's a lot of money. So to be able to keep that from going out the door is just incredibly important. So I'm really happy about that. But that Workforce Pell program, I think, is just going to be very instrumental in getting people into the workforce, very much sooner.
Yeah, absolutely. Aaron, I know the Secretary did talk about fraud prevention efforts. I know that the FAFSA team has been engaged in that effort. Working directly with institutions of higher education on identity verification over the summer. We've got a new tool that we're kind of been working on. Talk to us a little bit about the kind of what FSA is working on and what we're thinking about rolling out really soon.
I heard you were going to make a big surprise, a couple of new announcements.
Whoa.
I'm all set.
I'll have to think of a few.
Oh, okay.
I feel like this is a little bit of a big surprise announcement, sort of in its own, right?
Not if one knows you.
Well, okay, fair enough. So first off, I want to say a big thank you to all the schools and the FAAs, because over the summer, when we sort of understood the scope of this fraud problem, we were not able quick enough to get the technology solution in place. And so that meant that we flagged a lot more students for V4, V5 that then landed on your plates. And so we are very appreciative. We know that's extra work for you. We're appreciative of it. We're also appreciative that, and you can find me afterwards to tell me it's differently, but the general feedback I heard at NASFA at the conference when I talked to you was, yes, this is extra work, but if it means that you, FSA, are actually going to get your house in order on fraud, and this gives you data to do it, we're willing to do it, as long as this doesn't become a regular thing. I see some nods, so hopefully that's sort of consistent. So thank you for doing that. it did give us time to get our house in order. We now are able to verify the identity of every student and contributor who completes the FAFSA. What that allows us to do is take the responsibility for identity verification at our level, which is where it should be. It's, to some extent, sort of crazy that the previous system was, 5,400 schools would all need to individually be verifying identities of students. We have everyone fill out the FAFSA. We should verify their identity at that point. And so to be clear, we're going to do this in a way that does not decrease access for valid students and families that are trying to go to college. This is about having more people who are eligible and should have access be able to get there, and protect the Pell program and the direct loan program itself, because at the level of fraud that the Secretary was talking about, which the data backs up, that's a threat to the programs themselves. And so we're going to talk much more about this, and you'll get much more details. There'll be EAs, there'll be DCLs, there'll be webinars. But the core outcome is we will be confirming identity of users on the FAFSA. This will significantly reduce the rates of V4, V5 verification, not just from the previous summer's elevated rates, but from the baseline rates also. They will go way down. So you will be doing less verification because we will be able to confirm identities. Now, just so you know, the way this will, and we'll go into much more details later, this isn't going to be like 20 minutes of me telling you exactly how this works, but I promise we'll tell you.
You have to go to this session later
That's
today.
right, you have to go to the session later today. What this will mean is that a student who we believe to be fraudulent will wind up in rejected status. Their FAFSA will be processed, an ISER will be generated, but it will be generated in rejected status, right? It will not have an SAI, it will not be dispersible. If that student actually shows up at your campus and says, wait a second, a mistake was made, I'm a real student, of course we want that person to be able to pursue higher education. And so you will be able to then update that if you go through the normal V4 process, and then the ISER will become dispersible. An SI will be generated, the ISER will become dispersible. But the difference here is that instead of us sending you 10,000 valid ISERs that just happen to be V5 flagged and you have to verify, we're going to say, these are fraudsters. You don't have to do anything. If one of them happens to show up at your door, then there's a recourse, because we don't want to block anyone who's legitimate from going to higher education. Does that make sense, roughly? I guess you can't really say no, because we don't really have time for me to answer all your questions.
Once again, you should go to the sessions later today after lunch on that one. Yeah, I think going back to the Working Families Tax Cut Act, which I think is going to really be a big part of the conference over the next 3 days. And as I said, we've got FSA staff. They're going to walk you guys through everything. And with the intention of, a lot of these provisions, as we well know, go live July 1st, 2026. I want to ask, the Secretary, can you talk about some of the thought that you've had when it comes to loan limits, common sense loan limits, about the amount of debt that students get? I mean, obviously we have $1.7 trillion in federal student loans around the country, and you're responsible for as a secretary. And just talk to us a little bit about kind of like your overall thought on when it comes to debt, how what are some things that you're looking at as in your particular position when it comes to the financial health of the portfolio, making sure that students take out the right level of debt?
It's interesting because one of the things I think that we're addressing were the graduate limits,
right?
As well, and it's astounding to me that I never knew this, that a student could apply for a graduate program heretofore, whatever the cost of that program was. I mean, if they went to XYZ University and they said, well, it's going to cost $75,000 for this program, that's how much you could borrow. If it's going to cost $95,000, that's how much you could borrow. If it's going to cost $10,000, same thing. So why was there this great disparity? So under the new act, there have been caps so that certain professions, their graduate program is now capped at $100,000. And we've gotten a little bit of pushback, relative to nursing graduate programs. And then when we really looked at it, only 95% of all the nursing graduate programs across the country were far less than $100,000, but they can still borrow up to $100,000. Other professions, like doctors or I believe lawyers are included in this as well, they can still go up to $200,000. Those professions have that return. They will earn enough to repay that loan. So I think that is a great that is a great outcome, that we are actually not allowing you to get an overhead in this amount of loan unless you go into, the private market. And if you do, you will have convinced someone in the private market that you have the ability to repay. And if that bank or whatever wants to come on board alongside you, then they certainly could do that. It doesn't affect undergraduate programs. You go to college, you do the same. You can borrow the same, amount of money. But it's just, at the graduate level where we saw the greatest amount of debt get onboarded and loaded onto, these professions who might not all need, that graduate program to get into the marketplace. I mean, an RN can start working. Physical therapists or other of their health science programs, they can go into the market and start working, and if they want to go on and continue, they certainly can do that. And I think it's just incredibly important that was a really big aspect, that we took on. I think we've gone through rulemaking now. I think all that period's closed, and so still looking at making those adjustments, but with a very keen eye towards making sure that we can put downward pressure on universities to start reducing their cost. And that's part of this goal. I think costs are out of control from universities, across the country. We want to make sure that they themselves are looking at what they are trying to put onto the backs of the students.
I think definitely college affordability is something that many folks in the room deal with every day as well. And I think Congress has their own thoughts as well with the loan limits, and so we'll. I think the sessions later today, as well as tomorrow, will provide some insight on how we'll do that. So just to kind of wrap up, because I see that we've got some 0 times right here. Just to end on a fun note, this is a question for both of you guys, and I'll start with Aaron first. But financial aid administrators in this room were advising students throughout their post-secondary education journey, from filling out the FAFSA and throughout the loan repayment experience. What piece of advice, for Aaron, what piece of advice are you going to give your kids? Because I think your eldest is 13, who helped with his jacket. And then the question for the secretary is, what piece of advice did you give your kids when they were going to college? Aaron?
For me,
what have you learned over your experience to share with the group?
Yeah, for me in going to college, the most important thing was the people in the community that I was a part of and that I built with friends and people in that community. And so what I will tell my kids when they go to college is to take advantage of everything that is there, from extracurriculars to friends to Saturday nights to whatever it may be. But it's a great opportunity to build community, and that includes with staff and faculty and everyone else. And so there are people who have succeeded by leaning into classes and academics. My experience was that the community was everything, and so I hope that my kids will take advantage of that.
And Aaron's kids have actually participated in the beta. They're one of the first kids.
It was the first 26, my son filled out the first 26, 27 ICER. part of the beta.
Madam Secretary?
Well, I told my kids to please try not to major in partying, full time, but to enjoy college, but to remember why they were there. They were there to get an education. I'm very happy that they both did complete college and did well, and have gone on to do well, and they managed to do all of the partying that they needed to party. And I agree with you. The community and the whole aspect of going to college can be such a wonderful, wonderful experience. It can, although also be very difficult for some kids who are going to college and they're struggling to make these payments. They've got 1 or 2 jobs, and they're studying, and they're trying to get through college, and it's taking them longer than the 4 years. When I got into college, I just wanted to get out, and I went through in 3, and that was great because I got out a little early. But we have to be supportive of these kids that are in these communities as well, and understand what they're going through. But to focus, study first, please, and then make your way and enjoy it. And I told my children, I said, you are privileged because you have the ability to go with parents who are providing for your education, but understand that you are part of a select few, and to help any others along the way that you might be able to do that.
which I think is a great final word, and I think it demonstrates the important role that all of you in this room play, because you're the ones, right, that are on the ground talking to those students that may be struggling, those that are determining, how they're going to pay for their post-secondary education. So thank you guys for joining us on the first session.
Thank you.
And we'll go right into a break, right? I think, no, not a break. Actually, we're going to, I'll actually turn it over to Annmarie to help deal with that. See, I'm learning, guys. Thanks, you guys.
Thank you.